greet you in the name of Jesus Christ. Good morning. Bwana asifiwe. I want to take this opportunity once again to thank you for your participation, your ministry in this church of Mbandi. This morning, I want to think that we are all thinking about the Good Friday and Easter Sunday. Because if we are to be relevant to our Christian calendar, we should all be thinking about Good Friday and Easter Sunday. Good Friday is a Christian holiday when we remember the crucifixion of Jesus Christ and his death on the cross at Calvary. But then on Easter Sunday, we remember the resurrection of Jesus Christ 3 days after his death by crucifixion. For many Christians, Easter, which is a Sunday, is a joyful end to the period of fasting and of repentance. And therefore, this is a week when we are supposed to be thinking about the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ and its implication for us. In fact, you can say we are thinking about the suffering of Jesus Christ and also his resurrection. But also, I've been thinking about what is happening and asking myself, how can we be relevant? How can we be thinking also about what is happening in our country and in the world in general, especially the last 2 weeks? We cannot ignore that last week and even the previous week and this week have been very hard for many people because we have seen many things. Last week, a research showed that a high percentage of households or families are experiencing hunger in Kenya. They have no food. Also last week, there was an accident involving Pwani University bus and a marathon that resulted to a loss of 17 people. And many people were also injured. This week, at least 4 people have lost their lives as a result of protests in Nairobi and other cities in Kenya. At the same time, you would agree with me that millions of shillings have been lost through the destruction of people's property and the stealing that we have been seeing. Yesterday, there was another accident involving a marathon and a truck, which resulted to the death of 4 people. And we can continue and continue. In fact, when you move out of Kenya, it is even worse. On the 6th of February, there was an earthquake in Turkey and Syria, where the people who died are over 50,000 people. And in fact, due to collapse of big buildings, the government of Turkey says that they lost over $84 billion. That's a lot of money. I think you saw the big building how they were collapsing as a result of the earthquake. When you think about the Ukraine war, the invasion of Russia to Ukraine, and how that has affected the economy in the world. Today we are talking about the increase of the petrol and also the increase of the electricity, bills. All that is coming to us. They are going away with the other. I cannot ignore the fact that nearly all people in the world are also suffering. Therefore, as we remember the suffering of Christ on the cross, we are also confronted with the suffering of people here. And therefore, I ask a question. how does Christ's suffering on the cross relate to our suffering? Are they related? How are they related? Zinahusiana vipi? Some Christians, especially the people that I call the prosperity preachers, teach that followers of Christ should not suffer or get sick. Many people like quoting the phrase in 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 24, which says, by his wounds you have been healed. People like quoting that verse, even when they are praying for the sick people. And I know we have done that. But when you look at the passage, it has nothing to do with the physical healing. Nothing to do with the physical healing. The passage says, he himself bore our sins in his body on the tree, that we might die to sin and live to righteousness. By his wounds we have been healed. So what have we been healed from? We have been healed from sin, because we have died to sin and we live to righteousness. That's the logic. It has nothing to do with physical healing. Therefore, brethren, we need to be careful when preacher begins to say that we as Christians are not supposed to suffer, or we are not supposed to be sick. It is better to face the reality. The reality is that all people, including Christians, suffer and get sick. In my sermon today, I would like to encourage you by helping you to understand this. Listen carefully. The suffering of Jesus Christ on the cross does not mean we will not suffer, but it equips us, that is Christians, to face suffering with courage and hope. You see, it is not telling us we will not suffer, but it is actually equipping us, encouraging us to face today's suffering with hope and courage. But before I do this, before I emphasize on that last point, I want to use this opportunity to a little bit expound on what the verse says. Today I'm not going to be dealing with all the verses of the passage, but I'm going to be just expounding on verse 24 and 25 of the passage that we read. Matthew 16, verse 24. Basically, verse 24. Then Jesus told his disciples, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and then follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Now, in this passage, Peter actually had just told Jesus, you will not die. When Jesus actually said, I must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things. That's what Jesus enjoyed Peter. Peter said, no, you can't do that, Master. You can't suffer. And Jesus had told him, get behind Satan, because you are thinking about yourself. He wanted to continue living with Christ so that he can enjoy, the food and whatever Jesus was giving. And so that's why he was told, you are just thinking about things of a man, but not the spiritual things. And Jesus told him, no. Or he told his disciples, if you want to come after me, in other words, if you want to follow me, you must begin by denying yourself. Denying yourself has to do with accepting, to let some things go that are pleasing to you, but they are not pleasing to God. You deny yourself of some privileges so that you can serve God. And number two, he says, take up his cross. He's not saying that we take the cross of Christ, but everyone who comes to Christ, he has a cross to take. In other words, he has a suffering to experience. And that is given. The cross is suffering. It's actually the symbol of suffering, the climax of suffering. Therefore, all of us have to take a cross in a way or the other. And then, after we do that, now we must follow him. In other words, we must now begin to obey and obey his commandments. Today I want to almost behave like a teacher in a way or the other. Let me, first of all, ask the question, why do we still as Christians suffer? Why do we suffer? And I want to make some statements to help you understand this. Then I will move to the reason why we should take courage in our suffering. First of all, I want to remind you that we live in the fallen world. We live in the fallen world. And for lack of time, I want you to just write down Romans chapter 8, verse 20 downward. Just verse 20 downward. This is the passage where Paul was telling the Christians, when Adam sinned, all the creation was subjected to suffering. And the creation is still groaning, it is still waiting and crying and experiencing pain until Christ will come and rescue the creation and the people. That's the idea there. The creation. In other words, when Adam and Eve sinned, our relationship with God was affected. Our relationship with one another was affected. And even our relationship with the creation was affected. And therefore, because of that, we have sinful, we live in the sinful world. And therefore, this relationship with God, with one another, and the creation has been broken. And that is why we have war, that's why we have disagreements, that's why you can see the leaders disagreeing, leaders fighting. That has to continue because that curse of our relationship with one another, with the creation, was broken. And until Christ comes, that will continue being a pain, will continue being a struggle until Christ comes. Number 2, God may punish a person or group or nation for sinful acts. And that is why people suffer is because God will punish a person, a group, a nation for sinful acts. We have so many examples in the Bible. Let me just mention some. In Numbers chapter 14, verse 20 to 38, the nation of Israel suffered and everybody died in the wilderness because they refused to obey and believe in Jesus Christ. Only Joshua and Caleb who made it, who went to the promised land. In Numbers chapter 16, verse 1 to 8, there's a story of a man called Korah, son of Izhar, who grumbled and incited many Israelites against Aaron and Moses. He was asking questions. Why is Moses the only leader? Is he the only one who represented God? But again, you know the story of Korah. At the end, God opened the ground. Okay? And it swallowed Korah and his company alive. They were swallowed by the ground. And as you continue reading the story, there are people who came to Moses and Aaron and complained, this is so bad. You know what happened? You know, a plague came down from heaven. That plague. And 14,700 people died instantly. Until Aaron intervened and was asking God to forgive them because God almost wanted to finish them. The story of Joshua in chapter 7. Joshua chapter 7. This man called Achan. When God told the Israelites to go and fight Amorites and destroy everything, Achan decided to hide some things for himself. And as a result, they were so badly defeated because of the sin of Achan. Because instead of destroying all what they did from the people of Amorites, he was hiding some things. It was not until this man Achan was stoned by the people. And the people confessed. They were able to overcome the Amalekites in the following chapters. In the New Testament, these stories there are many stories. Ananias is a Bible. They conspired to cheat God, and they all died instantly. In Acts chapter 12, verse 20-25. Acts chapter 12, verse 20-25. Herod the king, he wanted to take the glory for himself. And God, through his angel, destroyed him. He sent worms, and he died. Friends, it is not every time that people sin because of sin. But when people sin against God or a nation, God can allow punishment. God might punish us for correction or discipline. This one we know. In the book of Hebrews 12, verse 7 to 11, Hebrews 12, verse 7 to 11, God is like our perfect Father, who can discipline us, not for bad, but because He wants us to grow, to be good. He wants us to share in His holiness. So in this passage, you find that God is saying sometimes He disciplines those that He loves so that they can grow in the likeness of Christ. And therefore, sometimes it can be just a way of disciplining us and correcting us. I know a young man who thought he was so smart at one point when he was getting engaged. And he approached this girl that he wanted. And this girl told him, "Look, I have another boyfriend that I have been with for years. And my parents know him. And therefore, I feel like I just need to keep that relationship." This young man, because he thought he was sharp, he persuaded this lady so much to the point where he told him, "I know what I'll do. I will help you write a letter to him so that you can explain to him that you are no longer going to be with him." And the young man sat down with that lady. They wrote a wonderful letter. And the lady, copied that letter. And he gave that man, or she gave that man, explaining that she has terminated the relationship. After 4 months, things changed. This man was going boasting to his friends. "You see, I really helped this young, I have grabbed this lady from this young other guy." No wonder what happened. Later, the parents and relatives and the friends of that lady, they went back and convinced her what she was doing was bad. So the lady wrote another letter to this young man, telling him, "Look, I have found it's very bad what I am doing to my former boyfriend. I want to keep him." So you see the pride of this guy who was saying, "I've used my wisdom to help her write a letter to her boyfriend." You see, he was humbled. Because sometimes there are things that we do, thinking that we are smart, but God will correct us. Number 4, God's suffering might be for our testing. That one we know very well. Look at the Bible. There are situations that God brings us through challenges of life so that He can test us. And the test is not meant to make you fail. It is made to help you learn and grow. And therefore, when we are tested, and then Peter actually talks about this, 1 Peter 5:10, it says, "In His kindness, God calls you to share in His eternal glory by means of Christ. So after you have suffered a little while, He will restore, support, and strengthen you, and you will be blessed, or He will bless you on a firm foundation." When we are tried, when we are tested, we are blessed in a firm foundation. And therefore, sometimes God allows suffering so that we may be able to learn from Him. And finally, suffering might be persecution for Christ's sake. Sometimes we may face persecution because of our firm stance. When you stand firm as a Christian, in many situations you find people begin looking down upon you, and the people may start actually avoiding you, may start actually talking bad about you. And therefore, it is very important that we also learn to rejoice in our trials, through that we share in the suffering of Christ. Let me read only one verse, 1 Peter 4, 12 to 14. The verse says, 1 Peter 4, 12 to 14, we just will read one verse of that. Peter says, we rejoice when trials come to us, for we are sharing in Christ's suffering. When we face trials, some of these things that happen to us are trials, so that we may share in the suffering of Christ. And once we see those things from that perspective, we will know that God is still in control. And in fact, some things God brings to us so that He may glorify Himself. Some suffering God brings so that He can glorify Himself. Remember our theme. Remember the story of this blind man who was born blind? And Jesus was asked, why is this man blind? And Jesus said, what? It was not because of his parents' sins, but he was born blind so that the work of God might be displayed in him. Sometimes suffering comes so that we may be able to face these things. Allow me to highlight the reason why we should face suffering as Christians with courage and determination. The main reason is found in the book of Revelation, chapter 21. Revelation chapter 21, verse 3 and 4. I want to turn to that. Revelation 21, verse 3 to 4. It says this. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, beyond the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with him, and they will be his people. And God Himself will be with them as their God. God Himself will be with them as their God. Verse 4. He will wipe away every tear from the eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning or crying nor pain anymore, for the former things have passed on. The new heavens and earth is going to come. And at one time, it is Christ who will usher in the new heaven and the new earth, where there will be no suffering. He says, death shall be no more. In other words, death shall die. Praise the Lord. Death shall do what? Shall die, because it will not be there. Remember, the worst suffering is death, like the death of Christ. And it will be no more. Friends, we should be actually rejoicing, knowing that Jesus Christ defeated suffering on the cross. One has to say. When Christ died on the cross, as we go to remember the death and resurrection of Christ, we need to believe and trust that Christ defeated suffering on the cross. He died for our sins. He paid the penalty for our sins. And because He was raised from the dead, He defeated suffering. And that is why at the end, the death will be no more. We can continue seeing it now, but we have a hope that the time is coming when our tears, our suffering, our pain that we experience when we are sick will never be anymore, because Christ defeated death on the cross, because He paid the penalty, the death penalty for our sins. Then also we need to know that as Christians, when we face suffering, we should face it with courage because we do not face it alone. In addition to Christ, we face suffering with the other members of the church. We face suffering with the other bodies. Someone said the church should help absorb our suffering. Absorb. In other words, the church and the brethren are there to help us. Galatians 6:2 says, carry one another's burden, and in this way you will fulfill the requirement of the law of Christ. Carry one another's burden, and in this way you will fulfill the requirement of the law of Christ that says the law of Christian is love. And Romans chapter 12 verse 15 says, rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. As Christians, we can face suffering, because as we face suffering, you are not facing it alone. And that is why we encourage, as Christians, sharing our challenges, sharing our suffering, always. And that is why actually we are encouraging small groups, the Bible Prayer Fellowship, through which you have brothers and sisters who can share with you. Friends, I remember telling you that in 2021, when I and my family were sick, 4 of us, 2 admitted. Friends, I want to say that the ministry of the brethren, and especially of our small group of Shorimau Bible study, and other Bible studies that we had in the family, we still have. Those people minister to us in a way that we will never forget. And so whenever people are actually suffering as Christians, we suffer together and we help one another. We go praying. And that is why we are encouraging each one of you to be a member of one of the prayer groups, prayer Bible study groups, so that we can be able to fellowship together and encourage one another, because these days life is hard. In fact, I remember a few days ago, a pastor from God in Massabit, whom we have visited for years, since 2015, he called me and said, brother, is there anything you can do? People here are suffering. Widows are suffering. People have no food. That touched us very much. And as we talk, our ministry is mobilizing some food to send to those people who know that can, but just quietly, by God's grace. Friends, church is a family where we should share our challenges. The last week, I said that suffering strengthens our character. Don't forget that. It is always going to be there and to strengthen our character. Friends, as we go through the challenges of life, I want you to think about the fact that this is not the end of life. We look forward to the end of suffering in the life to come. And this is why we can be strengthened always. Friends, the man who wrote the song, It Is Well With Me, his name was Horatio Spafford. He was a successful lawyer and a businessman who suffered tremendous loss in his life. Not only did he lose the business in the great city of Chicago through fire, but also he and his wife lost their only son to fever. And later, this man, he lost all his 4 daughters through a shipwreck in Atlantic Ocean. Shortly after the wreck, or after the 4 girls or daughters died through that ship accident, Spafford journeyed to England through the very waters where his daughters perished. And friends, it was while he was in that boat, in that ship, that he wrote, "It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul." And he continued singing that song. knowing that whatever struggles we are facing, it is well with us.